Hey everyone, welcome to Database. Here we are again, MJ and David. We're gonna do something nice and talk about something really awesome today. Mostly David, is gonna talk about the difference in terms of like report development experience in Power BI and Fabric, right? Like, and I'll be asking some questions as well, like because I myself have a lot of questions on the difference between these two. And I guess, on a high level, David, what's the difference?
Before we get to that, just wanna wait very quickly congratulate you for two things. MVP, Microsoft MVP for 10 years now. Amazing achievement. A community leader for 10 years. So much effort goes into it, and so many people benefited from you. So yeah, no, I think it's just great, amazing effort.
Thank
And
you.
also now you also acquired a new MVP. What do you call it? Like area or
Yeah, like yeah, area, right? Like yeah, technology
yeah,
area. Yeah.
technology
Uh,
area. So you also MVP for AI as
yes.
well,
Yes. And I'm
Azure
very
and AI.
proud and excited, nervous, and at the same time feeling a bit mixed emotions about it because Azure and AI, although there are like similarities, but they're still two different things, right? So yeah, again, excited. For what to say, right? Like,
Yeah.
and there's also Fabric, which is the third pillar. So that builds up my three focus areas.
Yeah, like I'm a very hands-on person,
Yeah.
and I've been doing Power BI development for a very long time. So right now, with Fabric, I'm just kind of starting to go, okay, for these kind of things, how does it work? So the experiment I've been running for the past week is around, okay, we've got, in our last video we talk about Direct
The
Lake,
reflex, yeah.
and conceptually I get it, but in actual practice, when I actually do the report, I didn't really understand how much of a difference does that actually make and what's the actual benefits. So I'm still kind of exploring that area.
Exactly,
So
because at the same time, David, right? You pointed out a good thing in there, which is like there's nothing broken or wrong with the Power BI way, right? Like it's not like hey, it's just gonna be end of life or like you need to move or something, right? Um, yeah, exactly. To that point, that's why you need more compelling reasons why you need to compare what's the Fabric version and the Power BI version and where this is going.
yeah, so exactly. So they're like, I think Fabric just brings so much different options into the game. And it's interesting and it's also a little bit overwhelming, I think, for a lot of users. So I'm just kind of starting with the simple one, Direct Lake. Okay, how do we do development with report development by Direct Lake? So um, let me share my screen. So yes, I think from the last video when we actually prepared for it, so I actually did a microservice that pings the Open Weather API on a daily, on a like every hour, and it will actually create a CSV file onto my blob container. So that is my data source at the moment. Um, Microsoft is now kind of suggesting this bronze, silver, and gold data sets.
Yeah,
So I
medallion
guess this,
architecture. Yep.
yeah. So this will be the bronze. Would that be right? Like this is just the raw data. There's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
processing at all. So in this process, we'll try to get it to a silver stage and then just run reports from that. And we're going to do it in two different approaches. One is Direct Lake, and the other one is just Power BI normal method. So I'll probably start with the Power BI side first. As you can see, in Power BI, and I'm trying to connect to my blob data source as well. So navigate here, and I just create the content expansion. It creates the function in Power Query, and then I can also get the data for all my CSV files in my blob. Right. So from here, I can do a bit more transformation around. Okay, you can see the datetime is actually in that second method, so I can actually add a new datetime in here. So there's a so starting point is that, and that one, the long number is just the number of seconds from that. So I'm just adding a duration for seconds, and then there's also a time zone column in here that kind of goes because we are in Sydney, so you just plus the 10 hours converted into seconds. That should work. So I got my daytime there. I'll just quickly change this to daytime. So all the steps up to here, they're just kind of loading the original data. This is the only real transformation step that's kind of taken place. And if I just go, okay, I'm happy with the data set, let's say, I'll close this, it will start to load into Power BI. It might take a bit of time. So while we're waiting for that.
While that's publishing, David, the question for me is, in Power BI Desktop, is that only for the Power BI.com, or can you also use Power BI Desktop for Fabric?
We can use Power BI for Fabric as well, because the workspace will be the same. Right. So is that what you're asking? So if I create a Power BI report and then when I publish it,
I guess there's not much difference in terms of the experience. If I'm using Power BI Desktop, I just choose like, hey, I want to publish to this workspace, and regardless if it's Fabric enabled or not.
Yeah, so with the Power BI side, and we'll get to it a bit later as well, but that is it's actually an interesting question. In fact, it's quite subtle, but when I'm doing the development in Fabric, I keep on trying to revert back to the Power BI way of doing things, and there's just a bit of it's almost like a mindset difference between the two, and I'll try to explain that a bit as well. So while we're waiting for this to load, so I've got a Dataflow 2, which is the online version of Power Query, really. So right now it's Gen 2. And if I click that, you can see. So you can see in here, it is, other than this graph above, they try to have this drag and drop kind of user interface as well, whereas the current Power Query is just like you click a button. So other than that, it's actually very similar. So if I look at the advanced editor in here, this is the Power Query. Yeah, it's pretty much exactly the same. I've got a few more transformation steps. The formulas are the same.
What do you call this thing, David? Is this M code?
This is Power Query M, which is a functional programming language in its own right, and it's powerful. But at least in the first version, for certain tasks, it's actually not very efficient compared to like Python, for example. So this part is pretty much the same. And one of the things I want to call out here is the destination, right? So with Dataflow Gen 2, I'm loading the data, transformed it, and here is where I actually select the destination, right? So I'm trying to publish this into my lakehouse inside the Fabric workspace. And yeah, with that one, I just give it a name, and I'll be able to actually publish it. You can actually load it. But one of the key things that I was talking about is the destination. So when I publish this, I've already published it, so I won't do it again. So when I hit publish, it will create a table. So that's the process I went through. I want a destination to be a table in my lakehouse. So now when I come to my lakehouse, if I go to the SQL endpoint, I will see this is the table that is created. And I can run a yeah, so you can see the data in here. So I thought this one actually includes the transformation steps.
Yeah, basically you kind of like skip the kind of like semi-staging layer in there, right? Like you just deployed it straight away to that warehouse.
Yeah, exactly. So I just chuck it directly into Lakehouse. I don't know why it's got a plus warehouse, but it's actually the Lakehouse.
Because you're in a Power BI persona, that's why.
Yeah, like a few things I'm actually not quite sure about. And this is where it really start to get different, right? So I'm using the import method right now, right? Because everything is, I import a thing from Blob. So it's actually been loaded in here. I've got my transformation, and I can write my normal DAX queries in here as well. So for example, if I want to create a table, I can go measures, double table. I just want a blank table to store all my measures. fine. I can just create it using DAX. I can obviously create like calendar tables or all of those things as well. And so here I just want to create this. I want to measure to call minimum temperature, so which is going to be the minimum value of this. And I'll create another one for maximum temperature as well.
By the way, this is one of those territories where you're really ahead to me, because this is that I'm not usually into this approach. Like you know me, I'm more like the Python notebook, Synapse type of
Yes.
thing, and I just treat Power BI as like just show this report.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like the devil is in the detail for like especially for this. That's what I'm finding. It kind of makes sense, but when I actually compare to my normal way of doing things, there's actually like this bit of a difference. So I got this, and I can kind of save this as browse this device. Yes, that's what I was looking for. I'll just chuck into downloads, and this is going to be whether import demo one. So I saved it. Once I saved it, I can obviously also publish that as well. So I'm going to publish this into my Fabric workspace. So it shouldn't take too long. Okay. All right. While we're waiting for this thing to publish, let's jump back into here. So again, now we are back on the Fabric development side of things. So the next step here is the data has been loaded into Lakehouse, and the next step for me is actually to do my development in this layer. Like it's kind of like a subtle difference, but I get quite confused, in fact. One of the key things I'm confused about is the fact that because this is not an import method, I actually can't create
Yeah,
new tables
exactly.
in
Yeah,
DAX. So I can't create a
Christine.
calendar table in DAX. And there might be a way, maybe I just haven't figured out how to do it as yet, but so far I haven't been able to do it. So instead, what I have to do with this direct lake method is I have to manually create a date calendar table in Power Query, which is Dataflow Gen 2 as well. So again, if I take a step back again, so in the data flow, so in this data flow, we've loaded the weather data, but you can see there's also like an additional calendar table and an additional measures table as well. This is just something that I would normally do in DAX, but I couldn't because it's direct lake method. And after I've created it, get up. After I've created that, I can then come back to my Lakehouse development, and then okay, I continue my normal work here, and you can see this measures table. And another thing, I create this measure table thinking I'll just store all my measures in here, but there's no option. It doesn't allow me to bring it into the data model for some reason. So this you can see I can actually bring this into the data model, but with measures, the measure table for some reason is treated differently. I don't know why as yet, but I actually can't bring it in. So the only thing that I can do when I try to create measures from here is I go, okay, I need to create measures in, oh, it's in here now. But I actually still can't create measures in the measures table. It's really strange. I don't know whether this is just something that's still in development, but I've actually got my measures in here. So this is one of the measures. So the total rain, I've got minimum temperature, I've got my maximum temperature. So the measures I actually created in here. So I created them under the display folder. So from here, the next step I then go is to create a new report. Right, so I've got my data model sorted. I then come into the online version of Power BI to create my reports. So I can do pretty much the same thing as before. I'll just come here and I'll find my measures, minimum temperature, maximum temperature, and the daytime thing. So there's nothing to publish because everything's already in the cloud. So all I need to do is to actually save it. So I'll save this as weather demo direct lake 2. And now hopefully the previous, yep, it's already been completed. So if I go to my Fabric workspace, I will actually see both reports. So this is the one that I just created using Direct Lake, and this is the one using the normal Power BI method. Like they look the same, but when I actually do the hands-on work, I think with Fabric, the biggest change is how the process actually works. There's certain things I can't use DAX. At least I haven't found a way to use DAX as yet to create tables. I can use DAX to create measures. That's fine. So my personal feeling so far is with Direct Lake, it's a good method, but I need to change my mindset to be more data focused. So the reporting is like the last step. So I need to get my data into Lakehouse table.
Exactly.
I need to do the transformation as part of that. I get my data model kind of pre-configured, and then I will be able to go into the report view to design the layout of my dashboard. If anything I need to change, I just need to go back to the previous step, make the changes, refresh certain things, and then go back to the report. I just felt like with the traditional Power BI method, it's actually more dashboard driven.
Yeah, like
So
Power
I
BI,
load the
they're kind of
data,
full.
I jump straight in, I just create my dashboards, and then if anything I need, I'll sort out things. And yeah, it actually felt like a pretty big change for me. I don't know why. Like
Yeah,
everything, all the
exactly.
components are the same, but it just felt different.
Yeah, because the thing is, you came from that Power BI mode, right? Like, hence, you know what, I've talked about this before, right? Like, if you came from that, it's not broken, nothing's wrong with it. It's just that you're within that circle of Power BI, and you would try to do everything the Power BI way. But once you go to Fabric, it's not just Power BI, it's one subset of the many different, workloads out there. Hence, how do you unify 7 different approach? Well, at least you can unify them in stages. Hence, what you mentioned, right? Like getting the data, transforming the data, modeling, and then reporting. So yeah, I think that's your answer. So that's why jumping to a Fabric is not just about you know report development per se this time around. It's more around like the whole end-to-end process now. Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Yeah. And because everything's in the same platform as well. So it kind of I think like you said, you will actually force the report developer, the data analyst, to acquire skill set in data engineering as well, right?
exactly. Yeah,
So that's one of the area where you actually become quite interesting. Um, I think the other thing I wanna kind of talk about is okay, now we've got 2 identical reports in Power BI in the Fabric workspace. Obviously I want to schedule it, right? That's the whole point. I want to automate as much as possible because the data source is an Azure blob, so it's like a relatively easy thing to refresh the data. What's interesting, I guess, is okay. I can if I find my import demo. So when I do Power BI, this is the question you were asking before, right? When I publish the Power BI report into the workspace, I get a semantic model and I get a report. So semantic model contains my data set and the data model. So I can schedule this one to refresh, however, let's say every 2 hours. And obviously with the direct lake approach, the data set is kind of taken care of with the data flow. And which means when I need to automate the data refresh, what I need to refresh is actually the data flow.
exactly, exactly, man. You get it, man.
Yeah, and that is where I kind of go,
Which again,
well,
if you put on your data engineering hat, it makes sense, right? Because you're restarting the pipeline itself, not just the dashboard or the report, right? That's why you want to schedule the data flow to flow again, right? You want the data to flow again.
Yeah, it's like the pipeline, right? I want to get it from source to one destination, and then report will link to that. Yeah. So I get it, but I think that's definitely the two main area that I kind of picked up. Yeah. So for this video, we just want to
Because back then,
kind
right, in the Power BI world, you have that, semantic model which uses the analysis services, right? So
yes.
that's kind of like a separate engine that's kind of like staging the data somewhere somehow, right? And doing that analysis component. Um, but this time around, that thing is now shared across Fabric, right? All this transformation is getting unified somehow, but you just decide how do you want to do it? Power Query way, Notebook way, Pipeline way, and we'll soon have DAGs as well. So
Yeah. And there are actual limitations for each approach. In the when I go through the learning, for example, everything just works, right? But for example, when I try to do it, use a notebook. So notebook can, in theory, do pipeline as well. So instead of using Dialogflow Gen 2, I can actually use Python, like Spark or whatever, to actually do the pipeline. But when I try to do it, I start to realize, well, if I want to use a notebook to connect to my blog directly, I need certain packages, and that may or may not be supported. I'm just using that as an example. It's a Python environment, but
for me, man, like I would still use the Python and the notebook stuff for transformation. I would still use the pipeline, the ADF or Fabric Data Factory pipeline
yeah,
for the ingestion and like data movement or something.
yeah,
But yeah, like the compelling reason to use the notebook is pandas and pandas, data frames, and that will kind of like much more, gigabytes, petabytes transformation
mm,
that, DAX, M code just can't do, man.
yeah. But the Lakehouse actually have another interesting aspect of it, because there's a file component to the Lakehouse itself, right? So to my Lakehouse here, so there are tables and there are files within the Lakehouse. So my understanding is, instead of me loading the data into blob, I can actually load it directly into files.
Yep, which is basically, if you come to think of it, this is data lake, right? It's
Yeah,
technically Azure storage, right? But again, unified, has hierarchical namespace, just like ADLS Gen 2 and all those stuff. But under the hood, it's still, a file system, right?
yep. But then it makes it more practical in a sense. Once I got my data in the Lakehouse directly, direct lake make more sense.
Yeah,
Whereas
and
if I got my data in blob, I still have to do the incremental refresh using Dialogflow,
yeah.
which will end up being
Also, with these files, one thing that you need to note of as well is that, in some workloads, you're not always dealing with tables. Think about computer vision, right? Or like document intelligence and stuff like that. Yeah, you need to ingest PDFs, right? Or you need to ingest images, and stuff like that. So, hence, yeah, files is a format for those.
yeah. So yeah, it's quite a like within Fabric. There's like so many things that can be done. Like you said, we can store completely unstructured data into files, and because there's the built-in Python environment, there's certain things we can just do straight away, and it's also in Azure, so we can actually call certain Azure functions as well. And yeah, so the whole integrating thing is actually quite amazing. I felt data platform plus Azure is actually also a quite interesting combination, because you're on Azure and AI and like Fabric as well. I think they're all kind of interlinked in some subtle ways as well. But yes, that's what I want to share. I think the next thing I want to do is to actually get the redirect the files from blob into files in Lakehouse, and then I'll see whether, once I configure that, is there anything else I need to configure for the report to be automated, like via Direct Lake. So that's probably the next thing on my agenda. Yeah,
Sounds good, man. Yeah, like again, this is very nice because again, I have a different persona and point of view and like background, right? But knowing where you come from, you kind of like represent, those who are coming from the Power BI camp, right? So yeah, that's a good point as well. Like I guess the general take for me is that you're not forced really to move to Fabric for report development. You can still do it the Power BI way, but what Fabric really offers is that end-to-end experience, right? The more like you come to a point where you have to ingest 10 different sources. You're not gonna do that in Power Query. I hope you won't, right? You you want to use different toolset for that, and then then that means you need to follow the principle of like these stages, right?
Yeah, it does change a lot of things. So, for example, where the data is going to land, for example, right? I can put the data, push the data into Blob, or I can push the data into Direct Lake straight away, into Lakehouse straight away. Um, company probably have a lot of data sitting in a SQL on a SQL server. There's a way to actually connect to it via shortcut, even if it's on-prem, right? And so, but then with the new data, do they still get, where do they then go, right? It will probably be easier if everything just lands straight into one lake, or the warehouse capability within Fabric. So that will actually cut. So everything become like a managed data source. So you don't need to kind of worry about the kind of external sources as well. So there's a couple of things when I start getting to it, I start to reflect on how organized, like a lot of the data teams currently operate, and how like there are certain pain points. I think
I think I think you just gave me a really good topic to discuss. In the next video, which is discuss about domains, this kind of like data sharing, and like like exactly what you said, right? Like
cool.
how does it really apply to like big organizations? So I guess that's what's gonna be our topic then for next week or next few days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll present that to you so that it gives you a good idea of this concept of domains, data mesh, and all those stuff.
Sounds great. Well, looking forward to that.
All good then. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Peeps. For it's been great. And again, Dave coming from the Power BI lens, it gave us a really good showcase of what the subtle differences between just Power BI and the Fabric report way. Until next time, we'll see you.
Yeah, and if you like the video, please subscribe. Looking forward to see you next time.
See ya.